Daniel stepped out of his farmhouse and into the cool night air. The sky was clear, dotted with countless stars that stretched across the horizon, making the small farm feel even more isolated. The wind rustled through the tall grass, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of night that usually promised rest. Yet tonight a strange sense of unease tugged at him. Earlier, while checking the fences, he had heard an unusual sound coming from the barn. It was faint, almost like a soft whimper, and at first he had convinced himself it was just a lost animal. But as the sound repeated, a twinge of worry crawled up his spine. Daniel wasn't the type to ignore distress, whether from people, animals, or even strangers. His instincts nudged him toward the barn. The wooden doors creaked loudly as he pushed them open. Shadows stretched across the hay-strewn floor, dancing in the light of a single hanging lantern. Daniel squinted into the darkness, trying to locate the source of the sound. He stepped inside carefully, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight. Then he saw it. Huddled behind a stack of hay bales was a small figure no bigger than a human child. She looked fragile, trembling, her limbs curled tightly against her chest. Her skin had a faint glow, a soft luminescence that made the shadows around her seem darker. Her hair shimmered faintly, almost like threads of silver woven with light. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught Daniel's attention. Her eyes were enormous, round, and filled with fear. Daniel froze for a moment, unsure how to react. He had seen many strange things during his years living in the countryside, but never anything like this. The girl, or whatever she was, didn't seem human. She had delicate features, pointed ears slightly hidden under her hair, and her small body bore scratches and bruises. Her breaths came in quick, shallow gasps. "Hey," Daniel said softly, kneeling a little distance away, trying not to scare her further. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." She flinched at his voice, cowering lower, but didn't run. Her gaze stayed locked on him, wary but curious. Daniel knew she was injured and needed help, but he also understood the risk. He didn't know where she came from or who might be looking for her. Still, his heart overruled caution. He moved slowly, speaking in gentle tones, showing open hands. "I can help you, please let me help." It took a few moments, but the small alien finally allowed him to approach. Her movements were hesitant, but she didn't flee. Daniel noticed that despite her fear, she studied him carefully, trying to understand if he was a threat. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a clean cloth and a small bottle of antiseptic. "I'm going to help clean your wounds," he said. "It won't hurt much." At first, she recoiled at the sight of the antiseptic. Her hand shook, and she backed away slightly. Daniel realized that touch and unfamiliar substances frightened her. He lowered the bottle and instead started with the cloth, dampening it with water. He slowly dabbed at the scratches on her arms. She winced once, but then allowed him to continue. Daniel's fingers worked carefully, cleaning the tiny cuts and bruises. Her skin was smooth and almost translucent, and he could see faint patterns beneath it, like thin veins glowing faintly. He had never seen anything like it. When he finished, he wrapped her in a soft blanket. He kept in the barn for emergencies. She trembled against him, and for a moment, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Whoever she was, she needed him, and he wouldn't turn her away. He gently lifted her in his arms and carried her inside the farmhouse. The warmth of the house seemed to calm her slightly. Daniel placed her on a couch and offered a small cup of water. She hesitated, looking at it as if unsure what to do, but eventually took a few sips. "What's your name?" Daniel asked quietly. She didn't respond. He realized she might not speak his language. "I'll call you Lyra, okay?" he said. She tilted her head slightly at the sound of the name, then relaxed a little. Daniel felt a small relief that she seemed to respond to the sound of a human name. He spent the next hour tending to her injuries and observing her. She was alert, watching him with large, intelligent eyes. Her fingers were delicate and slightly longer than human fingers, with subtle, iridescent nails that caught the light. She had an aura of vulnerability, but also a quiet curiosity. As Daniel worked, he noticed a small device strapped to her wrist. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. A tiny, glowing object with symbols and patterns that shifted subtly. He realized it might be a tracker or some kind of communicator. The thought made his stomach tighten. Whoever sent it here might come looking for her, and they could be dangerous. Daniel decided to hide it from her, at least for now. He didn't want to frighten her further. Instead, he focused on making her comfortable, offering blankets, warm tea, and soft words. Slowly, she began to relax, leaning slightly against him and letting herself rest. By midnight, the barn and the house were quiet again. Daniel sat nearby watching her sleep, thinking about the choices he had to make. Keeping her hidden was risky, but leaving her alone wasn't an option. He had to protect her. Over the next few days, Daniel worked to gain her trust. He spoke softly, made gestures, and tried to communicate in simple ways. Lyra began to mimic some of his gestures, pointing, nodding, and using expressions to convey meaning. She showed remarkable intelligence, understanding quickly and responding with thoughtfulness. She also started to reveal some of her abilities, though subtly. She could sense when danger approached, hiding instinctively before Daniel even noticed a stray animal or rustle in the bushes. She had an uncanny sense of hearing and sight, noticing things from afar that Daniel would have missed. He marveled at her abilities, but also knew they could attract unwanted attention. One evening, as Daniel was closing the barn doors, a strange sound echoed across the fields, a low, mechanical hum. Lyra stiffened and pointed toward the woods beyond the farm. Daniel followed her gaze and saw faint lights moving between the trees like distant stars coming closer to the ground. "They're looking for you," Daniel whispered, realizing the truth of her situation. She nodded, her eyes wide but trusting him. Daniel knew they couldn't confront these searchers directly. His only chance was to keep her hidden and hope his knowledge of the land and his quick thinking could protect them. The next few days were tense. Daniel fortified the barn with extra precautions, setting traps and creating hiding spots. Lyra stayed close to him, her trust in him growing with each passing day. They formed a silent partnership, relying on each other in ways neither had anticipated. Despite the danger, moments of quiet joy emerged. Lyra was curious about human life, fascinated by simple things. The way fire warmed her hands, the sound of rain on the roof, the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven. Daniel smiled at her wonder, realizing that even in a world filled with uncertainty, simple acts of kindness could create bonds stronger than fear. One night, as they sat watching the stars from the barn loft, Daniel reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had gone from a solitary farmer to a guardian of an alien child, facing challenges he had never imagined. Yet he felt a sense of purpose and connection he hadn't known before. Lyra leaned against him, small and trusting, and Daniel promised himself that he would protect her no matter what. He didn't know what the future held, who might come for her or what dangers awaited, but he knew one thing. Kindness had brought them together, and it would guide them through the trials ahead. As he looked down at her sleeping form, Daniel felt a quiet determination settle within him. This small injured alien girl had changed everything. She had brought light into his life, reminding him of the power of compassion, courage, and trust. And though the night was dark and uncertainty loomed, Daniel knew that together they could face whatever came next. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, carrying the promise of challenges yet to come. Inside, in the warmth of the farmhouse, a bond had formed that neither distance nor danger could break. Daniel and Lyra had found each other, and, in that finding, a story had begun. A story of courage, hope, and the extraordinary strength that humanity could bring to the galaxy. The morning light streamed through the farmhouse windows, illuminating the small living room, where Lyra had settled on a blanket near the fireplace. She moved cautiously, her glowing skin faintly shimmering in the warm sunlight. Daniel watched her from the kitchen preparing breakfast. Despite the calm appearance of the morning, the tension of the past days lingered heavily in the air. Every shadow, every distant sound made both of them alert. Daniel knew they could not remain hidden forever. Whoever was searching for Lyra would not give up easily. The small device on her wrist pulsed faintly, sending signals he could not yet fully understand. It was a warning, a reminder that danger was approaching, even if it was invisible for now. He set a plate of bread and fruit in front of her, and she studied it curiously, picking up a piece with delicate fingers. She ate slowly, still cautious but with growing trust. Daniel sat down nearby, keeping his eyes and ears alert. He had grown to understand her subtle movements, the way her ears twitched at distant sounds, the way her eyes widened when she sensed something unusual. The peace was short-lived. That afternoon, faint mechanical hums reached Daniel's ears from the edge of the forest. Lyra froze, her body stiffening, and without a word she pointed toward the trees. Daniel followed her gaze and saw small, sleek drones gliding between the trunks, moving silently but purposefully. Their sensors swept across the field, searching. "They're looking for you," Daniel whispered, more to himself than to her. Lyra's lips moved slightly, producing soft, melodic sounds. Daniel realized she was trying to communicate, but the language was foreign to him. Still, the meaning was clear. They had to move, and they had to move carefully. Daniel's mind raced. He knew his knowledge of the land could give them an advantage, but he also knew he could not fight advanced technology head-on. He decided to prepare the barn for a defensive stand, not to confront the drones directly, but to create obstacles and distractions. He worked quickly, stacking hay bales strategically, tying ropes, and setting up makeshift alarms that would alert him to movement. Lyra helped silently, moving with careful precision. Her trust in him was evident, and he felt a strong sense of responsibility to protect her. As night fell, the forest came alive with the faint glow of the drone's sensors. They were methodical, scanning every inch of the property. Daniel and Lyra remained hidden in the loft of the barn, their breathing quiet, hearts pounding. Every creak of wood, every rustle of leaves made them tense. One drone hovered close to the barn door. Daniel held his breath. He watched as it scanned the exterior. Lyra's small hand rested on his arm, almost as if she could feel his tension. Then the drone moved away, continuing its systematic search. Daniel exhaled slowly, relieved but aware that this was only the beginning. The next day, Daniel realized that hiding in place was no longer safe. He needed a plan and he needed allies. He began to think beyond the farm, considering who could be trusted. There were neighbors, friends, and even travelers who might help. But trust was fragile, and he could not risk exposing Lyra to someone who might inadvertently betray them. Daniel spent the day teaching Lyra about simple survival techniques on the farm. He showed her how to move silently, how to hide, and how to observe without being noticed. She learned quickly, her intelligence and adaptability evident in every gesture. Despite the danger, there were moments of laughter, small games, shared discoveries, and quiet stories of life on the farm. These moments reminded Daniel that courage and compassion could coexist with fear. The following night, the drones returned, more determined than before. This time, Daniel was ready. He had set traps using old farm equipment, tripwires, noisemakers, and smoke generators. As the first drone approached, it triggered a chain reaction. A tin can rolled across the field, a rope snapped, and a cloud of smoke rose from the barn's roof. The drone's sensors were temporarily blinded, and it retreated to regroup. Daniel and Lyra watched from above, exhilarated but cautious. Lyra's abilities became more apparent during these moments. She could sense the drone's approach before they were visible, and guided Daniel to make adjustments quickly. She moved with agility and precision, showing that her small size did not limit her effectiveness. Daniel marveled at her capabilities and felt a deep pride in their partnership. The next challenge was more direct. A larger group of drones arrived, their technology more advanced and their purpose clear. They were here to retrieve Lyra. Daniel realized that staying would be too dangerous. He needed to move to find a safer place where they could regroup. He packed essential supplies, careful to include food, water, blankets, and a small medical kit. Lyra followed, carrying a tiny pack that Daniel had prepared for her. As they moved through the fields under the cover of night, Daniel kept a careful watch on the drones. Lyra stayed close, her senses alert, and together they navigated through the terrain, avoiding open spaces and sticking to areas where the trees provided cover. The journey was tense, but Daniel's knowledge of the land and Lyra's instincts kept them safe. After hours of careful movement, they reached a secluded area near a small stream, hidden from immediate view. Daniel set up a temporary shelter using branches and tarps. Lyra explored the surroundings cautiously, her glowing eyes scanning for threats. Daniel admired her curiosity and bravery, recognizing that even in fear she remained determined to understand the world around her. The following days were filled with quiet vigilance. Daniel and Lyra established routines, gathering water from the stream, preparing food, and keeping watch for drones or other signs of danger. Lyra began to learn more about human habits, asking questions through gestures and soft sounds. Daniel responded patiently, showing her simple concepts like how to light a fire safely, how to identify edible plants, and how to signal quietly. One afternoon, while gathering supplies near the stream, they noticed unusual tracks in the mud. Lyra immediately recognized them as alien in origin, not human or animal. Daniel's heart raced. Whoever had sent the drones was closing in. They had to be ready. He set traps around the perimeter and created hidden paths that would allow them to move quickly if needed. That night, the danger arrived. A group of scouts appeared at the edge of the clearing. Daniel and Lyra remained hidden, observing silently. The scouts moved with precision, clearly trained to find their target. Daniel knew confrontation was inevitable, but he also understood that cleverness and human ingenuity could level the playing field. As the scouts entered the area, Daniel activated his traps. Noise and confusion erupted, giving them precious moments to escape further into the forest. Lyra moved quickly, guided by her instincts, and Daniel followed, keeping close. They ran through the trees, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. It was exhausting, but their combined skills allowed them to evade capture. After hours of running, they finally reached a hidden cave that Daniel had noticed during previous scouting trips. It was a safe spot, shielded from sensors and difficult to access. They settled inside, catching their breath and tending to minor scrapes. Lyra leaned against him, trusting and calm for the first time in days. Daniel realized that their bond had grown stronger through every challenge. Lyra's intelligence, curiosity, and abilities complemented his experience, courage, and determination. Together they had survived threats that neither could face alone. He felt a profound sense of purpose, knowing that protecting her was more than a duty. It was a commitment to something greater than himself. The next morning, Daniel began to think long-term. They could not remain in hiding forever. They needed allies who could help Lyra safely return to her people, or at least ensure that the forces pursuing her could not harm her. He considered reaching out to trusted contacts in nearby towns, people who valued courage and honesty above all. Lyra seemed to sense his thoughts. She moved close, placing her small hand on his arm, a gesture of understanding and trust. Daniel smiled, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. Their journey had changed him, teaching him patience, resilience, and the power of empathy. As days passed, they continued to navigate the forest, always alert, always learning. Lyra began to show more of her natural abilities, sensing danger, moving silently, and even blending subtly with her surroundings. Daniel marveled at her skills, realizing that her presence was not just a challenge but also a gift. She taught him to see the world differently, to notice the small details, and to trust in instincts. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a cliff overlooking the valley, Daniel spoke quietly. "We'll find a way to keep you safe, Lyra. I promise." She responded with a soft hum, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. It was a moment of connection, unspoken but understood. The forest around them was still, the night approaching with quiet determination. Daniel knew that their journey was far from over. More challenges would come, more dangers would appear, but he also knew that together they could face anything. Lyra had shown him that courage, trust, and kindness could overcome even the most advanced threats. And so, in the quiet of the forest, with stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, Daniel and Lyra sat together. Their bond was unbreakable, their determination unwavering, and their story, a story of human bravery, alien wonder, and the extraordinary power of compassion, was only beginning.